Welcome to Simple Sci-Fi. Today we're going to be working on Ray's blaster from Star Wars. Let's get started.
So here we have all the parts and pieces that we're going to need. The trigger, these plates will go on either side of the main part of the blaster, and of course the hand grips. This goes inside the barrel there. Now you can kind of see that these three pieces look a little different than the rest of them. They're a little duller looking. I've already done some sanding on these three pieces, but as you can see with this particular print, some of these are going to require a little more finesse than others. There's some poor spots on these, but that's okay. It's just part of the challenge. Alright, well, I'm going to start doing a little sanding on some of these pieces and maybe some filling in with some putty, and we'll hit it with some primer. Okay, so I got the first layer of primer on, and it's time to start doing a little sanding and shaping. As you can see, some of these pieces need a little TLC to shape up. This one I actually started putting a little putty in. I showed this one before. As I sand that, I'm going to have to shape it flat because that's going to be the plate that goes between there. Of course, the grip here, there's some pits that are going to have to be filled in. I'm going to do a little sanding on them, put some putty in. The nozzle, as you can see, it's got some definite imperfections that are going to have to be shaped and sanded as I go along. Also, the trigger is a little too squared off. I'm going to be doing some dulling the edges and rounding the edges a little bit as I go. And as you can see, this is actually on the prop. This blaster is held together by screws, machine screws, and this actually has the holes for them, but actually they're just marker places. Actually, I'm going to have to drill these holes bigger to put the screws in, and they have the same holes in these plates and in the pistol grip also, and that's actually what will hold instead of gluing these on, they're actually going to be held on with actual screws. But first, we've got to get this all set to be smooth and nice. Some of these grooves that are in here, as we go along, they might start to get filled in or lose their definition. I'm just going to have to make sure I go in with the needle files and keep them cleared out as we go along. That way, when we're done, and I've got the this is going to have an aluminum coat all over it, aluminum paint coat, and then when I go through with the weathering, these deep recesses will really pop and show. Alright, I'm going to get started with the sanding process and shaping, and try to clean up a lot of these wonky edges. Okay, so I've got the layer of primer on, and I did some sanding and also some filling in with the putty in some of the areas that needed it. On the pistol grip, there were quite a few pits that needed filling in, some grooves on this side. I filled those in and just sanded them flat. There were some cracks and gaps on this. The end of this piece here, right here, I've pretty much filled in this whole thing. I had to clear this out. This was misshapen and uneven. I had to use my Dremel to make that actually a circle, and then I filled the whole thing in with putty and sanded it flat. And this piece, there were a lot of loose threads of material on either side of the under part, well, whichever side you would call that. I sanded those away and filled in the leftover gaps with putty, and then sanded those into shape. This is actually the piece that goes like that. Okay, I'm going to get another layer of primer over top of this and do some more sanding on top of that, and we're going to get smoother and smoother. Okay, so now I've got everything nice and sanded and smooth, primed, and it's time to put a coat of black on the whole project, and that way when I do the aluminum color, it will give a nicer base for that color to come through. Okay, let's get started with the black. Alright, so we've got everything painted a nice shiny black now, so that these grips will actually stay black. That's what they're supposed to be. But the rest of this we're going to assemble and start applying the aluminum chrome in very light multiple layers. The only thing we're not going to put on here yet is the screws, the hardware, because we don't want to paint those. They are going to stay their regular color, and then when we weather, it'll show a little better. Alright, let's get moving on to the next step. Okay, so assembling this, we don't need these yet, so we're going to put those aside. We'll start with this. Now most of these pieces will fit together. I might decide to apply some glue once we have the silver applied, the aluminum chrome. But for right now, they stay put together pretty well. Alright, so these plates will go here. I actually had to drill this hole out a little bit because this didn't fit in here after the layers. There we go. camera a little bit because I couldn't get it to fit together right. Alright, so we'll come along the back plate. Okay. Now everything else is going to need to be glued or screwed. The trigger glues up in there. I think I probably will glue that in there before I start painting. But everything else will have to wait because it's going to require some of the hardware. I did forget to mention one thing before I start with the paint. I had to drill out the holes for all of the screw hardware, because if I did that after, it would have messed up the paint. So that left a lot of plastic kind of corkscrews and rough edges. So I just took my knife and just kind of spun it around in there, and that seemed to clean all the holes out pretty nice. Okay, now I've got the silver paint on, and as you can see, I've started putting the grips on. Now the screws up here actually are holding the grip itself, but down here it's too thick. The screws wouldn't reach, so these are actually glued in and glued down, so that's why I have this clamped. Now, it's worth noting that this paint, any paint that's got like chrome in it, this is aluminum chrome, it takes forever to dry. This has been dry for 24 hours, and if I leave my finger on it for too long, it actually sticks and I come up with some paint on my hands. So if I could have used a different color on this, I probably would have gone for just a regular silver metal, but this is what I had on hand. So now I'm going to start putting in the hardware. Now the screws I got for this, I couldn't find the screws that exactly matched what's in the real prop. Those actually have the pin in the middle, but these are close enough. That's what I could find, and I could only find one length. So for this section that's thinner, I actually had to cut some of these down to be shorter, so that I could put them on both sides and they wouldn't meet up against each other. And I just used my Dremel with a metal cutoff wheel. Alright, so let me get the hardware started. Now this is going to be difficult, as I said, this paint is, while it's dry, if I linger too long it sticks. It takes probably a good few days for this to actually stop doing that. Alright. Alright, I'm going to work on getting the rest of these in. There's going to be 2 here on each side going in that way. 6 going that way and holding these plates down. And I actually have, there's a set screw in the bottom and top. And I've got some of those to put in there. So I'll get the rest of these in. Okay, now as you can see, we've got all the hardware in. It's looking pretty good. Now it is time for the fun part, weathering. Alright, so I am using, first off, wrought iron acrylic. And I've got a brush, paper towel, and a little piece of sponge. So what I'm going to do first is just start dirtying it up around the screws is one place. And then use the sponge and kind of dab it off. Like so. Now the temptation in the way that our minds work is to make everything look symmetrical and perfect. But that's not the way that things weather in real life. You kind of have to purposely make oddities and unsymmetrical wear and tear. Alright, here we are with our finished prop, raised blaster. Got it all weathered.
Thank you for watching Simple Sci-Fi. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.